Hi everybody, hi Jen. I just got off the phone with my friend Kathy, and while we were talking, I just had a huge awareness that I had to share. So we have been working, or I guess I'm always working, on how can we get more into a parasympathetic state. What are the easiest keys to get us in a parasympathetic state? And we have really figured out that when horses or humans get into a cortisol comes out with stress. When you get into a cortisol state, cortisol does horrible things to you, but cortisol can look like a horse under cortisol can look quiet. Many people think that it looks relaxed, but it's really not relaxed. It's stressed, it's frozen. It's trying to do whatever it needs to do to keep things as peaceful in the environment and safe in the environment as possible. But the horse doesn't feel safe. The lack of feeling safe is going to spike your cortisol or your adrenaline. I have recently read that women in menopause, which of course I'm in that age group, in menopause start spiking more cortisol. I guess when you lose your other hormones, maybe you get more cortisol. I don't know, maybe you get more stressed out, you get more cortisol. But cortisol can do all kinds of horrible things to you, including give you hip pain, knee pain, but cortisol has an effect on your ligaments and your fascia, which it tightens it all up. And I was just reading about how it's tightening all these ligaments up, and it makes you more susceptible to injury. So we totally see that in the horses. High cortisol in the horses sets them up for more suspensory injuries, tendon injuries, any kind of soft tissue injuries. It also makes them stiffer in their stifles, stiffer in their hips, SI, all these things. It is directly related to the cortisol. So what do we need to do to get rid of cortisol? Well, the thing that seems to banish cortisol is endorphins. Endorphins go with relaxation. Endorphins and relaxation go with leadership, allowing somebody else to drive. The horse letting go of the leadership. This is a huge deal. Besides endorphins and leadership going together, whoever controls the shoulders and the feet, especially the front feet, is driving the bus. You know, that's the person that's leading. That is a huge deal, because I had been finding that if we had a horse that wasn't really relaxing or is really, really hugely tense, instead of just going to tapping on them hadn't seemed to be the place to start with those horses. Sometimes I've been starting with the palate, and I couldn't understand exactly all the reasons that starting with that palate could help. My normal starting place is playground of safety. Is like you stand holding a boundary, holding space for that horse to start to relax and cycle. go inside itself, roll endorphins, then relax enough to come out and be present and move, and then relax again and go inside itself. But if a horse is really, really shut down, like if it's got a ton of cortisol, playground of safety doesn't seem to work, at least not very fast. So how could we be more efficient at helping those horses find endorphins? So I had found having them stand front feet on the pallet had really sped that up. It made it a lot more efficient. Now, I thought it was just because when you put the horse on the pallet, it elevates the wither. It puts the horse in much more of a parasympathetic posture. Wither up, weight more on the hind end. Often when horses stand on that pallet and it shifts their weight back, they start standing squarer behind, they start standing wider behind. You get all these really great changes out of standing them on the pallet. And it's just one of my go-tos for frozen horses, high cortisol horses, to help speed it up. I also really liked standing on the pallet and the stretch, because you get a wither stretch, intercostal muscles, those muscles between the ribs, that gets a stretch. You get a lumbar release, hamstring release, psoas release. Psoas muscle holds fear. So standing those front feet on the pallet gets a psoas release. So it starts to encourage those muscles that get really, really tight, lumbar, hamstring, and psoas. It releases them before you try to stretch them, because if you try to stretch them first off, they're not going to do it. The other thing it does is it engages your belly muscle, your transverse abdominis, which is main muscle of parasympathetic nervous system. So I knew whether something feels painful or it feels like a good stretch depends upon whether you're in sympathetic survival or parasympathetic rest, digest, play, learn, heal, trust, connect side of your autonomic nervous system. So when we stand them on the pallet's low enough that it's not such a huge stretch, but it's enough stretch that the stretch piece starts releasing endorphins as well. So I really like using the pallet because it gets us an even stretch versus tapping, because tapping, you're going to be releasing little spots at a time, and you can get a much bigger, more even area by doing it with the pallet first. The other reason to use the pallet versus tapping, if you've got a horse that's high cortisol and really shut down, that tapping is, you're creating a stress, and you want the horse to solve the stress puzzle with connection or relaxation, with tagging either oxytocin or endorphins. Well, if you have a horse in a cortisol state, that's freeze. So by creating more stress with the tapping, you could potentially drive them worse into freeze. So anyway, I try to do some other things first on high freeze or high cortisol horses, besides just going straight to the tapping. So we've been using these pallets. It's been working great. Well, in my friend Kathy McEnroe's work, she does a lot of orthobionomy, and one of the orthobionomy techniques is to lift the front foot, and she talks about taking that front foot out of gravity. Well, she says when you lift that front foot and you stop the horse from touching you or touching anything in the environment, which we know if the horse is touching things with its nose, it's getting big oxytocin releases. And often our high cortisol horses, high freeze horses, are also, they really like connection. They like touching things. So those horses will often want to really touch to get some oxytocin. So you lift the front foot up, and they need to not be biting on you, touching on you. They've got to have their head free. Well, in the orthobiotomy, we lift the foot up, and we wait until we see the horse stop searching outside its body for the answer, and you'll see it go inside its body. That moment it switches and goes inside, that is our processing moment. That is the moment the horse switches from trying, doing seeking oxytocin and maybe spiking adrenaline or releasing cortisol that freezes it up. When it starts processing, when you see it blinking, the ears working, licking its lips and stuff, that is endorphins. It starts to release the endorphins and turn on a parasympathetic response. Kathy also was saying, wow, look at how when we lift this leg up, she was saying it was taking the horse's leg out of gravity. And when you took that leg out of gravity, the horse then has to go in and rewire and reset its balance, which they do seem to. And they do seem to do that when they stand on a pallet or stand on a mounting block or a pedestal. And we recognize that lifting the front foot and standing on a pallet or a pedestal or a mounting block was getting a similar effect, but we couldn't quite figure out why they were getting similar effects. So then today I totally put it together. We were talking and I was like, oh my gosh, I just realized what the heck is going on here. When we lift the front foot and the horse is accepting that and they relax into that, one of the things that we look for in orthobiotomy is for the shoulder to relax and it kind of drops a little bit. That is telling us we've gotten a big endorphin release, I realize now. And since the feet go with leadership, the feet go with endorphin release, the feet go with relaxation, just like the nose goes with connection, the nose goes with oxytocin release, the feet go with relaxation and endorphins. So by the mere fact of picking up that front foot, it's doing a whole big reset. Now, it does the reset if the horse is not touching things with the nose, and it does the reset if you wait until the horse goes inside and then has a release. I was like, holy cow, this is revolutionary. At the ring, one of our friends, Liza, started to lift the front legs like Kathy had shown us. And people were noticing that and thinking, that's interesting. I had tried after, Kathy showed me that and I knew Liza had done that. I have had a few friends come up and their horses would be really antsy and stuff. And I said, will you mind if I do this orthobiotomy thing of lifting the front leg? And they're always like, okay, do whatever you want. And I had noticed when I lift the front leg of an antsy horse up by the ring, they relax. I mean, this is like so freakishly simple and epic. I'm so excited. So then you start to think about, what about the guys at the horse show? There are a lot of guys at the horse show that every time they go to get the horses out of the stall, they pick the feet. Now, initially picking the feet before the horses leave the stall is to keep the shavings in the stall so that you're not getting the barn aisle all messy. But I think it has another effect. I think it also, by lifting those feet and the horse accepting lifting the feet, it's like a reset. It's resetting the horse to go into a parasympathetic state before they ever leave the stall. Now you may say, well, my horse is already in a parasympathetic state. But some horses are and some horses aren't. If horses have a negative relationship with people, with their attachment with people, and you're it's a crapshoot. What does being caught out of the stall trigger in your horse? Well, these guys that are cleaning the feet before they leave the stall, that is a sort of a way to be particular at setting that horse into a parasympathetic state. Isn't that amazing? And then Kathy said, yes, this is why it is so important to lift your feet on your babies, to handle the feet on your babies. The more you handle those feet, the more your horse practices getting into that endorphin state, parasympathetic state, letting you drive. This is also why if we can put a rope around a foot and you can lead a horse by the feet, holy cow, horses that allow you to lead and suggest things by the feet, they are way more accepting. Now, if you go too far, like the people that tie the feet up, if the horse does not have any way that it can get away from you, like if it's trapped, you're going to build more cortisol and shut down dorsal vagal response. That is not what we're after. We're after accept and offer you the leadership. The horse needs to have free choice to be able to jerk the leg away if it wanted to. When horses offer, allow you to take hold of these feet, it's a huge deal. It also goes, you think about old-fashioned round penning, where you chase the horse until it offers to let you lead it, join up in a negative way. That's also a control of the feet, but that's a control of the feet spiking adrenaline, where tying the feet up is in control of the feet that's spiking cortisol. Adrenaline has terrible effects on you too, but cortisol is the one that is so misunderstood, really. So Tommy was asking me, do you think it makes a difference whether you're lifting the front feet or you're lifting the back feet? And really, I had to think, what is the deal with that? Well, whoever controls the shoulders and the front feet is usually the one that is driving. That's who's the leader of the herd. And if you and your horse are together and your horse says, nope, you don't move my shoulders this way, your horse is driving. If you are able to softly and easily move those shoulders around, then you are driving. So I said, oh my gosh, doing the front feet does have extra effectiveness at triggering endorphins and inspiring that horse to offer for you to drive and lead. So yes, it does matter. I think you get more bang for your buck lifting the front feet than you get lifting the back feet, which obviously the back feet are important too. But the front feet, if you only could lift up one set of feet, the front feet would be it. Back feet and crossing the hind feet tend to go more with connection and oxytocin release than they do with relaxation. So you probably would get a dual effect, but you'd get it's going to go a little bit more with connection than relaxation. The front feet is going to be more about relaxation, also some about connection, but more about relaxation. So this is incredible. So we've got to set it up so that the horse has a free choice, feels like they could jerk their leg away if they felt unsafe. That's going to get you the best effect. Tying up the leg or chasing the horse, those are going to push your horse more into a sympathetic or survival state. And some people are like, well, I don't really care. Well, you do care, because the more the horse is triggered to be in a survival state and they're internalizing what they would have done to try to survive, all that has to come out in a trauma release. So you're either going to deal with stuff now or you're going to deal with stuff later, but there is no not dealing with it. So I find it really fascinating. This is so cool. So the more you do things that you're directing the feet, or you're getting control of the feet, the more you're going to trigger the endorphins, and you're going to drain out the cortisol and the adrenaline. So let's take this one step further. Let's think about the people, or even, we all love a well-broke quarter horse. But if you think about the way a lot of those tougher horses used to get broke, tying them up, throwing them down, and we're, of course, talking about an extreme thing here, sort of out west where you got to break a ton of them and they're kind of feral, and they would tie them up years ago and do it. Well, when you tie them up and the horse cannot escape, it is almost as if they leave their body. When this horse leaves its body, it's not there. May be obedient, it may do what you said, but the reason you feel like it's got when people say a broken spirit, it's because the spirit got broken and sent out of the body, and now you've just got a body to be able to puppet. In today's world, we do not have room for that. We know horses are sentient beings. We also know, even if you don't want to go sort of a horse hugger route, performance. You're going to get your maximum performance when a horse is in a flow state or in an endorphin state. If the horse is out of its body, or if the horse is shut down or blown up, you are not going to have your maximum athletic potential. So even if you are a hardcore performance person, racehorse person, show horse person, if you want to win at the highest levels, you've got to have this endorphin state. Endorphin state is going to run faster, jump higher, turn better. That is going to be slide further. That is going to be the state that you're going to get your best performance. And it's also going to be the state where the horse lifes up when you ask it, but then it also turns off. When your life goes down, its life goes down. So now we're going to come all the way back to the beginning. Many horses are oxytocin or connection addicts. Those horses will have a tendency to want to connect, to get their fix, but they will do connection, and then they maybe do adrenaline, flight, connection, and then they spiral up, or they may be connection and then shut down, cortisol. That's a hell loop. We do not want that. We really would like to have connection, relaxation, connection, relaxation. Relaxation is endorphins. The feet, whoever controls the feet, is going to be driving. Your horse will not relax unless somebody else is looking out for the safety of your herd of 2. If you are not driving, if you are not looking out for the safety of the herd, the horse cannot relax because somebody has to be looking out for the safety. So, whoa, how are we going to put this to use? You're going to do things with the feet. So yes, standing on the pallet, standing on the mounting block, those are awesome things to do. But also doing our exercise called hokey pokey, where you put some little piece of something. It could be a board, it could be, I don't know, a saddle pad, a towel, it could be anything. If you put that on the ground and then you start saying, I want you to put your right front foot on this, and the horse puts their foot on there, and you wait, or you keep putting it back on until that horse relaxes, licks their lips, that's going to help you get this endorphin release and get you some control of these feet. So you could do hokey pokey. The other piece that's even more simple is clean your horse's feet. Pick up the feet. And right before we go in the ring, picking up the feet and waiting for that horse to breathe out, lick its lips, start blinking. Lifting the foot brings the horse back into the body. So, yay! So one of the biggest things you can do is pick up your horse's feet and wait till the horse relaxes. I'm so excited. That's where we're going to start, controlling the feet. And I think we've been figuring this out because I guess now, almost a year ago, in January of last year, we started doing, I had one that came in that you could not handle the feet. And this thing was tight as a tick. Oh my gosh, it was in a bad state. So I started doing this. If I can inspire the feet to touch things, that's gonna help. Because this thing would kick your head off too if you tried to touch handle the feet. And then I was like, I also feel like this horse is sore in its stifles, sore in its hocks, sore in its hips. Instead of picking up the feet if it's hurting the horse, which if it's got a high enough cortisol load, it's going to be sore and it's going to hurt probably. I could have that horse touching things with the feet. I used a little board, and I was shocked how that changed the horse. And I've been able to use that with high freeze horses ever since, and it makes a big difference pretty quickly. So for those of you that need more endorphins, need more relaxation, picking up the feet, especially the front feet, inspiring the horse to touch things with the feet, especially the front feet, all that stuff is going to help. And once they can do the front feet, then doing the hind feet too gives you a bonus, and that builds your connection and relaxation. But for many of these horses, connection is natural, relaxation is not. So we want to do things first that are going to be heavy on the relaxation. So I hope this helps you. Thank you.